Today we're talking about the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. But first, if you're new to the channel, my name is Anson, and on this channel we talk about filmmaking, specifically budget gear, tutorials, and the behind the scenes look at the projects that I'm working on. So if that's something you're into, consider subscribing. Now, if you're not familiar, the Canon FD 50mm f1.4 is a vintage lens. This specific model is around the 1979 era. I don't know if it's specifically made in 1979, but this specific model of the Canon FD was initially released in 1979. Now, that being said, there are a couple of different versions of the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. This one is specifically the new FD, or something that's commonly referred to as the NFD 50mm f1.4. So we're gonna go ahead and get into reviewing this lens. And as always, with all of my lenses, we're gonna break it down by image quality, build quality, and my overall thoughts, / who I think it'd be useful for. And let's start with image quality. Now, one thing I appreciate about vintage lenses is with the right lens, you can get a ton of character, but also still see a ton of sharpness. This 50mm is that case. You're gonna see a ton of character, but it is also very sharp. I do like the fact that it opens up to f1.4 because of my vintage lenses. This is probably the fastest lens that I own. And so if I'm doing low light scenes, or I just need that extra subject isolation, I'm gonna use this lens because of the f1.4 aperture. And the thing to keep in mind with vintage lenses, and this is the case with the 50mm, is that often you don't have to use diffusion filters. With these modern lenses that are made to be clinically sharp, you have to use something like diffusion filters to have a good highlight roll off, whereas using some of these vintage lenses, you don't necessarily need that, and so that's one less thing you have to think about when you go out and shoot. This lens is definitely a lens that I gravitate to when I'm doing more artistic shoots or something that I don't need that clinically sharp image. This is one that I definitely pick up. All right, so if you haven't gathered by now, I love the image that comes from this lens. So let's talk about the build quality of this lens. And that's where vintage lenses are amazing, because these things are hefty, really compact lenses, but very well built. Now, I do have a follow focus ring on this lens, as well as a step up ring with 67mm. Now, the one thing I don't want to mention with build quality is things like the focus ring is very smooth and the aperture is very smooth, because that really depends on the model that you pick up. But I will say the one I have has a very fluid focus ring. It doesn't have a huge focus throw. Unlike the Helios 442 or some of the Soviet lenses, those are perfect for filmmaking because the focus throw is very long. These aren't terribly long. I mean, they're decently longer than some modern photo lenses, but it's really not that long. So keep that in mind. And the barrel does extend when you're focusing as well. So if you're using a matte box, especially one that's clamped on rods, you may see a shift when you are focusing. So that is one thing you want to keep in mind. All right, so with that, what are my overall thoughts and who would I recommend this to? I would recommend this to any indie filmmaker that's looking for lenses that have good character and are very sharp, but not trying to spend a ton of money. The conversation around vintage lenses came back up for me as I've been trying to buy some lenses that offer character, and I've been looking in some modern lenses because I like cine style bodies and things like that, but it came back to looking at vintage lenses because really when it comes to character, you're not gonna beat some of these vintage lenses. There are a ton of times where you see films that have more of a organic or just natural feeling imagery, and often those were shot with vintage lenses. And so knowing that some of these vintage lenses have been used in other films is something that's just really kind of just cool. The Canon FDs are actually cousins of the K35s. There are some FDs that have the same optics as the K35s. Now, it's not the NFDs, but they are distant cousins of the lenses that modeled the K35 optics. And so it's just really cool to think about the fact that you potentially share the optical qualities of some of these bigger films. And so as an indie filmmaker, it's just a no-brainer. If you're looking at something that has character, look at vintage lenses. For those that do want that more organic filmic look, absolutely look at the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. So that's it for me. If you guys do have questions about this lens, let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you guys for joining. Go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Stay safe. Be happy. Support each other. Wash those hands, and I'll see you here next time. Peace.
It's so damn hot. So damn hot, yeah, yeah. So damn hot, yeah, yeah. So damn hot. It's so damn hot. So damn hot, yeah, yeah. So damn hot, yeah, yeah. So damn hot.